This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everybody. Good morning and good evening, and welcome to the ArchiCAD User Group webinar series for 2022. If you don't already know me, I am Matthew Phillips, the Western Cape representative for Graphisoft SA. I will be your host and moderator during these sessions. On today's agenda, I'm going to explain a bit more about these user group webinars, who should attend, when they will take place, and why a user would want to join. Next, I'll introduce our international presenter and allow him to take you through their services and solutions. Once he is done with his presentation, there will be a quick Q&A session where attendees are welcome to ask the presenter any questions relevant to the topic. Thereafter, we will finish off with some closing remarks before ending this month's webinar. Every webinar will be recorded, and the recording will be made available on our website, which is www.archicad.co.za. During the Q&A session, please either type out your question and direct it to everyone, or unmute yourself. Please be respectful of others and remain muted unless you are asking a question. Please also try to stay on topic during these sessions. If not, I'll quickly jump in and assist us with getting back on track. If you have any questions or suggestions, you're welcome to send them through to me on my email address, which is matthew@archicad.co.za. We at Graphisoft SA wanted to improve the voice of the ArchiCAD community here in South Africa and thought it best to restart the user group meetings to better engage with our users. After all, building community creates unity. These webinars will be focused on content which users will find relevant to improving their workflows or upskill their knowledge. The focus is on what you, as the users, want to see or learn about. So who should attend? Anyone who uses or has used ArchiCAD or is interested in learning more about what ArchiCAD can do or collaborate with. These webinars will take place once a month on the last Tuesday of every month, except for January and December. They'll be 1 hour in length, and we'll do our best to adhere to these times. And why would you want to attend? To build community here in South Africa and to grow your knowledge and potentially network. So without any further delay, let me introduce our presenter, Brandon Reed, the Director of Redefine. His company was founded on his passion for assisting design consulting businesses in improving their competitiveness. By implementing holistic digital strategies and thought leadership, Brendan drives change and delivers improved business performance and culture. I will handle any questions during the Q&A session. Over to you, Brandon.
Thank you, Matthew. I'm assuming you can hear me. Yes, no?
Yeah, we can hear you just fine.
Good, excellent, great, thank you. Thanks for the introduction. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what you can do or common issues that I've found which impact business performance. And this is really sort of ArchiCAD centric. So I'm going to take you through my presentation. So today I'm going to talk about me initially, very, very briefly. I won't bore you with me. But then I'll talk to you a little bit about a bit of a preface into what I'm going to talk about, industry insight and so on. Then I'm going to divide the insight, split into sort of various channels, operational, people, processing, technology, and then we'll talk about some next steps. So to introduce you, these are my avatars that you may or may not have seen on social media. The guy on the left is the more artistic me. This is the guy that was the architect once upon a time. The guy in the middle is the more corporate me. I'm beginning to dislike that guy more. I need to move back towards the more artistic side. But the guy on the right is basically what's driven all that grey hair that you see on and then the middle one. So I've been around the industry for a long time. I began in 1990 in New Zealand working for a small practice, delivering quite significant projects for a small practice. We were delivering on drawing boards at that time, and in 1993, I think it was, he actually purchased AutoCAD. So that was my first introduction to CAD. We really didn't use it anything more than just a drawing board. Yes, you could copy paste. You know, it was interesting to have paper space, model space, but I thought this new paradigm was well, if we call it a paradigm, I had a real affinity for the technology, and so I actually started building standards at that time. So I really thought this is more of a path for me. I quite enjoyed that. In '94, I moved to Christchurch, and Christchurch is in the deep South Island of New Zealand. I was working in ArchiCAD for the first time. Now, they were an early adopter. I believe that they were actually the second practice in New Zealand, second or third practice in New Zealand to have ArchiCAD. And that was my first taste, and really, I haven't looked back. Since then, I've worked in Melbourne, '96. I went to the US in '98 and actually took a sabbatical and worked in a hotel for a couple of years on Miami's South Beach, which was fantastic. Went to London in '99, worked for a very large practice in the UK called HRA at the time. They're now JRA. They're still in ArchiCAD, I think 120 or something staff. They're quite a big office, very large projects. Then I went back to Australia, came back to Australia into Melbourne in 2001 and moved to 2004 in Sydney, where I am now. And I think while being in Sydney, I've worked for a number of practices. In fact, actually during my time, I've worked in a number of practices, but more recently worked for a very large contractor here in Sydney for a couple of years, and really sort of saw the value of quality information. And thought, you know, we can manage our information better. And how can we do that in ArchiCAD to be for the benefit of people like contractors? That's really what sort of stuck with me. And it's something that I really thought at the end of my time at Lendlease, I started my own practice and thought, this is what I want to do. I want to give back to the industry, and I want to share my knowledge and insight to the users. So in 2019, I formed my business, and we've been going pretty strong ever since. And interestingly, the majority of my clients are actually remote, and maybe some people might think, you know, coronavirus impacted a lot of businesses in a negative way, and I must say, for me, it actually was a positive in the fact that it meant that more people were remote and working remotely, and they were open to the idea of me offering services in a remote way, which is pretty interesting. I have a number of affiliations. Building Smart, I love my Open BIM. SIBBIM, I'm a committee member, founding committee member of a group who bring 4 or 5 events, live events to the Sydney BIM users every couple of months. We've obviously had a 2-year hiatus, but we're back on board, I think, next week, which is pretty exciting. I've been working for Graphisoft as a teacher and educator, an instructor for their BIM Manager program for a couple of years, and I've also been involved with Graphisoft for over 20 years in beta testing and the futures team and so on. So what am I going to talk about? Interesting. Architecture is tough. It's getting very, very tough. It's increasingly competitive. Fees are being squeezed, and it's very quickly becoming a race to the bottom. Architects are being required to produce more at higher quality, more quickly. Data outputs are increasing as its value is realized. Information management is becoming, if not more important than the 2D deliverables. And there's a shift, and not just handover, but the ability to collaborate effectively. In ArchiCAD, we must be very, very good at this. And Graphisoft has provided a great tool, but we still need to know how to drive it, right? So we need to get better, and we need to get better at being digitally agile. We need to get better at learning how to extract more value. And how can we get better? How can we get better as an industry? How can we get better as a practice? And how can we get better as individuals? Now, this is not going to be a bad news story. We've got some really great things to share. If anything, I'm hopeful that you'll leave here today with a number of questions that you can take back to your practice, that you can act upon. So what makes me an authority on this? So, I mean, for one, I'm really engaged in the industry. I make it my business too. I attend many events, and I also host them as a community member of SIBBIM. I keep a really broad view. I try to, you know, yes, I have an affiliation with ArchiCAD, but I also like to understand what's happening in the Autodesk world, what's happening with Revit. How can we play better with Revit? How can Revit play better with us? So, you know, I also have a very open view of other software. And at my time at Lend-Lease, I was actually leading a team of 10 people who were all on Revit. So I have a pretty good understanding of the tool and how it works. And not that I've ever delivered a project in Revit, but I could certainly speak its language, although probably dangerously. As a function of my business, I'm in constant communication with lots of people in the industry. And one of the core services that I offer is actually it's an investigation of a practices delivery mechanism. So it involves performing an analysis on their template, a number of projects, library content, third-party add-ons, the whole lot. But in addition to that, I also interview a cross-section of employees, including the business leadership, to get an understanding of a practice direction, goals, objectives, what's working, what's not, where to find things. And in some cases, I've actually interviewed the whole practice. In fact, one large practice, they were about 35 or 40. I actually interviewed everybody. And that provided an enormous insight. And I suppose as a result of all of these audits that I've performed, I've got tremendous insight into the industry, and I can see these common themes appearing, and that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I typically use a people process technology approach, which sort of paints this complete picture of a company's status quo. And this, of course, is what provides us with the insight into the opportunities, which ultimately leads to business or improved business performance. So people process technology is the operational efficiency necessitates people, processing technology, all to be working in harmony, all in sync with one another. So people perform the tasks described in the process by sometimes leveraging the technology. And for people to perform at their best, we need there to be roles and responsibilities, we need educational programs, we need goals and measures, incentives and rewards. Process are the steps, actions and/or content to achieve a particular goal or set of goals. And examples of these might be content, templates and libraries, workflows, best practice, standards and guides. And technology provides the tools that the people can use to implement the process, such as, you know, ArchiCAD, BIM Cloud, repositories and source of truth, and so on. So focusing on just one or two of those creates or results in an imbalance. For example, often companies believe all their problems are going to go away by buying a piece of software or a piece of tech. However, technology is only as good as the processes, which is only as good as the people who execute them. So yeah, it's a bit of an interesting one. So we typically try and we look at each of those pillars and how they're operating within a business, and we identify where the issues are. Sometimes the issues don't fall exactly within the people process technology, and they form probably more of an operational issue, and so we highlight them as operational. And that's what I'm going to first talk about today. So based on all these audit analyses, These are the insights that we've gained, which I'm going to tell you about now. I'm not necessarily going to tell you how to improve the business, but what I am going to do is provide you with insight into common issues that we've seen, which if resolved can lead to an improvement. And I suspect a few of you have already seen these. So BIM technology strategy and investment, this is something that I don't necessarily see a lot of, unfortunately. People just sort of drive in this ad hoc way, which is interesting. And the thing is, it's actually fundamental to the profitability and sustainability of any practice. It's not just how projects are delivered, but ensuring its agility to remain relevant. And it's actually applying that people process technology approach to your practice. For example, at a high level overarching strategy, what are you doing about attracting and retaining talent? Ensuring your people provide consistent high quality outputs productively, establishing a single source of truth for communication and collaboration, and then you can be really specific. You know, how do we educate new employees? What are the new features of ArchiCAD and where's the value for us? How do we communicate internally? So ArchiCAD strategies are also quite often lacking. You know, when and how are ArchiCAD versions upgraded? Something that I don't see a whole lot. Specific workflows, which I'm going to talk about in a future couple of slides. How is BIM Cloud used to deliver projects? Roles and permissions within the BIM Cloud, and libraries. Libraries are a really interesting one. That's something that I see unfortunately managed really poorly, which I'll talk about in a future slide. And then prioritization of development opportunities. Who determines what the priorities are? And while I know we all do this, we often always work on the easy things and the fun things first. We always work on those things first. But in fact, they may not be where the high value things are. They may not be the high value items. In fact, I was working with a company who their technology guy was building this amazing tool. They were only going to use it once on one project, you know, and he was spending days on it instead of working on perhaps a tool that the whole office could use on a regular basis. Would save a lot more time. So he was working on it because it was fun. I don't blame him, but you know, these things need to be looked at, and I don't really see that enough. We really need to be looking at high impact, low effort, that sort of low hanging fruit. Right, let's talk about people now. So one of the key people aspects in any business is accountability. Do employees have roles and responsibilities, or role descriptions, for a better word? Are they held to account? Are there KPIs? What are the responsibilities? What specific tasks do they have? And what are their goals? It's something that I just don't really see all that often, unfortunately. And if there are roles and responsibilities, I don't necessarily see the technical side, that sort of the BIM technology CAD sort of overlay to them. You know, and technology is actually fundamental to practices now. It evolves incredibly rapidly, and the demands are increasing, as I was saying. So, you know, who's ensuring practice continues to improve the way it works? And what does the accountability behind that look like? And if there is a BIM technology, if BIM and technology is how projects are delivered, then you know it must be included. It must be included in these. So I also found business leadership often don't engage with the BIM technology leadership any more than any other employees, even though they're responsible for its fundamentally to the business. And this is typical function of either not having the appropriate descriptive roles and responsibilities, in some cases not actually understanding what the role should entail, and or not having the time, maybe not even having understanding of the technology at all. So, and you know, in a lot of cases, the BIM technology lead must communicate and engage up to that leadership. And that's also really tough because often the leadership need to be communicated to in a particular way, and they don't understand this sort of technology. So it can be a real challenge. But your practice in the industry will really benefit from this change, which is a good segue into sort of the business leaders lacking the BIM technology and knowledge. From my experience, the business leadership knowledge of technology is a real mixed bag. It often depends on how long they've been in architecture, also whether the BIM technology leaders communicating, engaging up, as I was talking about. There's a need for them to be engaged in the delivery mechanism. Again, it's core to the business. So business leaders can feasibly enter into agreements. In fact, not feasibly, they are entering into agreements without understanding the real implications of what they're signing up for. I've seen in fact, I was actually discussing it with a client just a week or two ago that they had agreed to a Revit deliverable for an extra $3,000. He never even knew what it was going to take for him to deliver that Revit deliverable or what the expectations were of that Revit deliverable. He was like, oh, it's just Revit, it's easy, $3,000. So these are real issues. So you really need to have a really good understanding of the technology and in fact, get that information from your team. What else is there? I think also when you're talking about Revit deliverable expectations, you need to have the confidence to manage those situations. When they are talking about a Revit deliverable, find out what that actually means or where did that come from. And you may find that they're just saying Revit because that's the only software they know. It may not be that they understand what ArchiCAD can do. So you can actually turn a potential roadblock into an opportunity by talking about OpenBIM, by talking about IFC and the value that they bring to project delivery. And I think that if you can instill that confidence, then then that's a benefit to you. Something else I've seen is that BIM technology leadership lacks the industry engagement. Not attending events such as this or forums, which are great for learning. Going to an event where you can actually have a face-to-face conversation with your competitors, understanding what they're doing, sharing what you're doing. As an industry, that brings everybody up instead of keeping everything close to our chest. It's a great opportunity for problem solving, understanding what the new software is and what their roadmaps are. It's great for your business, and it's great for the industry, like I said. And we really should be, bringing all that information back to our business and sharing it with everyone. Have an hour session where they present what they found at these sessions. So this is something which I think is also lost a little bit, and that's challenging the status quo. Challenging the way you're working. We're all used to working things in a particular way because it's easy. And there's no risk because you've always delivered it this way, which means that you're always going to be stuck in those old ways of working. We should be striving for increased productivity, for higher quality, and thinking of failure as actually an opportunity to learn. We should be actually learning to test things and fail quickly, but fail forward in a positive way. We should be encouraging people to do that. We should pick the projects to do it, but then we will learn in time to get better at that. But I really would suggest that people really start looking at doing that. Education is something that also I find is lacking in that there's no internal sort of formalized internal education, very little dissemination of knowledge where people share their ideas and share their learning. And no lessons learned where what they've learned in a practice and shared that. It's something that I think will be really, really valuable from most practices, and it's something that I instill in every single practice that I work with. And I think also now that we have these platforms like Teams and Notion and Monday and these other sort of cloud-based collaboration platforms, and they become a repository for learning. People can share, and you can, they're transparent, and you can searchable, and you can go back and have a look at things. So, I think technology has made that very easy now. Process. Manuals and standards often don't exist. I often see an A3 handout or a PDF of an exemplar project and say, this is how we want to deliver projects. We want you to copy this. And what that tells you is what the 2D outputs look like. It doesn't tell you how to achieve them. It doesn't tell you, this is the tool in ArchiCAD we use to deliver the door schedule. This is the methodology we use in ArchiCAD to deliver reflected ceiling plans. So, BIM software is very, very complex, or ArchiCAD is very, very complex. And back in AutoCAD, you could only do things one way. You could always only draw with lines and fills. Whereas these complex BIM tools, you can achieve things multiple ways. Do you want your people spending a week doing a door schedule, or would you rather than spend a day? And if you document it, then of course the right way, then people hopefully would follow that documentation and deliver things more effectively. So I think it's something that should really be, I can't reiterate this enough. The last comment about previous projects lose to leverage new, quite often I see practices taking a previous project and then saving it as a new one and just modifying it, in which you're carrying those bad practices forward. So it's definitely something that should be frowned upon. IFC files are an interesting one. I think we're still in our infancy of using IFC, and it depends in which market where you are in the world. But there's certainly this open BIM methodology is certainly becoming much more prevalent. It definitely is in Europe. I can see it definitely is here in Australia. I suspect it will be driven in other markets. IFC can be created very, very easily in ArchiCAD. It's incredibly flexible, but just because it is easy doesn't mean it is going to be right. So we just need to make sure that people are managing the IFC effectively. IFC is not very friendly with Revit, and because IFC's relationship with ArchiCAD and this is sort of affiliation by default, Revit users get pretty upset with ArchiCAD users. They think that, this ArchiCAD IFC file is really poor. The problem is actually often Revit's failure to import IFC files effectively. Autodesk have not developed that engine, unfortunately, particularly well. What else is there? It is everyone's responsibility, and I think in time, as people start getting used to this IFC deliverable or this method of transferring information, it will be managed better. Favorites are a great way to ensure that people are creating elements with the appropriate classifications for IFC. So I would encourage you to have a look at using favorites if you haven't already started doing so. Library management, as I was talking about earlier, something I see a lot is it's just libraries, right? You can just throw everything in the embedded library and it's all okay, and you've got duplicates and triplicates and substituted libraries. This can lead to poor performance in your files when libraries are not managed effectively, when you allow people to download whatever they want from the internet. I was working on a hospital project many years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago, and someone had found a 25 meg hospital bed, and they brought it into the project. And this is a very large hospital, and I think there were 100 of them, 100 25 meg, very high polygon hospital beds, really had very little value in the project. Now I get it, sometimes you want to have that really nice image, which I'll talk about sort of visualization in a future slide, but was it worth bringing all of those beds in to the whole hospital when really all you wanted it was for one image? And these are things we've got to weigh up and understand. So I think libraries can be managed, and they can be managed well. You just need a strategy on what you're doing. I'd really discourage people from using the embedded library. The embedded library should be empty, and that's just really good practice. Templates, ArchiCAD templates. it's funny, just because you've got, an ArcCAD 23 template and I've now moving to ArcCAD 25, and I'm just going to take that ArcCAD 23 template, save it as ArcCAD 25, and here you go, I've got an ArcCAD 25 template. Probably not the best thing to do. And in fact, every 3 years or so, you should be rebuilding your template from the ground up. Only because the back end, some of the coding has changed and it could impact that template that has been saved as. So I would always recommend you at least every 3 years to rebuild your template from the ground up. And besides, every year or two, Graphisoft brings some great features and some really good tools that you can take advantage of. So I would definitely take advantage of that and look into that. There's so much productivity can be gained by having a really robust template. Automation, that's something, again, ArchiCAD's got some great tools inside that allow you to automate things, labeling and visual representation. Now, a simple thing like using a zone, you can actually now use the zone name to provide your elevations a name. You can have a north, south, east, west, north, south, east, west of a particular room, for example. Project information, there's some fields in there that you can use on your layout book, which a lot of people are actually doing now, which is good to see. And revisions, I still see people using revisions manually, just putting a text box on the layout. So Revision Manager, while it does take a bit of effort to learn how to use, it's very flexible, and I would encourage you to learn it and use it. It's actually very, very good. Lots of opportunities for improvement using automation. Technology. So I'm not affiliated with any of these softwares at all, just sort of full disclosure, but I've seen some great software, some great communication software, people using Teams really, really well. In fact, I use Teams when I communicate with all my clients. I use that as a medium to communicate. SharePoint Online is another fantastic web-based application, part of the Microsoft 365 suite. You can put all of your learning on there. You can put all of your processes in a cloud-based system, cloud-based platform. It's accessible from within ArchiCAD. Your staff can actually view it on their phones on the way home to and from work or at home because it's cloud-based. It's an amazing platform. In terms of quality assurance, BIM Collab, their Zoom product is free. I would encourage you to download it. You can view IFC files in there really well. It's an amazing platform for no cost. Celebri is also a great platform, limited for free, unfortunately. Blender BIM, I'm unsure whether any of you know what Blender BIM is. Blender is an open source platform like 3ds or 3D Studio, allows you to animate, create. And Blender BIM is an add-on to Blender, which brings an IFC engine to it, importing, exporting, managing data, IFC data. It's pretty amazing. It's free. In terms of visualization, I've seen really, really great use of Enscape. Enscape's an amazing platform. Unfortunately, not for Mac, I don't believe at this stage. I do hear it's coming, but not for Mac. Lumion is a great alternative, and so is Twinmotion, and I see those both used really, really well. As a practice, these are sorts of things you start weighing up. Is our visualization going to be out of ArchiCAD? Therefore, are surfaces important? Or are textures important in ArchiCAD, or do we just keep it as a white model and we use platforms like Lumion and Twinmotion as our visualization platform? And these are the sorts of conversations I have with people all the time. So, sort of starting to wrap up, questions for you. I basically want you to go away with a couple of questions and take away, and the way I look at it is that you don't learn unless you ask a question. So reflecting on this insight, I want you to think about what your next steps are going to be. Ask yourself, what mechanisms are in place to ensure technology is being utilized to its fullest? Does the business leadership drive technology? Is there accountability in employees' roles and responsibilities? Is there scope to challenge the way people work? Is there a mechanism to capture and disseminate new ways of working? And how do people learn? So hopefully this presentation has identified some of the issues in your practice, which now obviously provide you with an opportunity to address them. And of course, thinking about business performance being impacted by more than just a tool, there are many, many layers to it. The business is a complex system of moving parts. It's not just about the tools that you use, but also how they're used and the people that use them. It's a combination of ensuring that the business is strategic, people have accountability, and that these people are continually educated and that their voices heard. And that's me, Matthew. Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. Appreciate you doing the presentation. One thing I do remember speaking to you about in the dry run was market yourself. How can people make contact with you?
I think the best way to contact me is probably by my website. I've got a form on my website that you can go and connect with me via there.
Okay, great. Well, let's move on to Q&A. If anybody has any questions that they'd like to direct at Brendan, you're welcome to type them out onto the chat box, and I will read them out as we are going. So I just learned from last month's session that Chatbox does not appear in the recorded session, so I have to read them out. Okay, so I've got a question here from Kat. ArchiCAD might do well to provide a guideline on migrating templates, outlining how to integrate the new features. I'm not sure whether that's directed at you, Brendan, or specifically directed at Graphisoft SA. Would you like to take a crack at it?
Provide a guidance. Might do well to provide a guideline. He's asking on whether ArchiCAD do have guidelines on migrating templates outlining. If you, my understanding here is if you're on Select, which I'm not sure what it's called in South Africa, whether it's the Select agreement, but if you're on Select, there are a number of guides that are available to users for free via the learn.graphisoft.com website. They've got quite an in-depth number of workflow guides to actually teach you how to migrate projects and so on. I think that's what you're after. I hope. Integrating new features, that's an interesting one. I mean, I think you've got to spend the time looking at the tool as well, I think personally, and actually understand, how these tools may work for your business. I don't think there's probably no one source out there. There are a number of people in the industry and community that are talking about some of the tools and the new features. I wish I had time to do that in my, I think there's skewed.com.au, Nathan Hildebrand. He used to post every year the new features of ArchiCAD. I assume there are probably others. Matthew, are you familiar with any others?
So just to answer it to start, SSA is our pay a monthly paid version compared to the Australia's version of it. You can go online and the YouTube ArchiCAD channel. They post the new features that come out every year on their channel, and they share it. I see it quite frequently shared on LinkedIn. So I can share a link that I use very frequently, actually. Let me just open it up on my side, and I'll just share it in the chat box. So what you can do with this link is it is basically a database where you can click on any of the links, and it will redirect you to a forum or a description of that latest version, and it's for every single ArchiCAD version since the dawn of time, which is amazing. So there's the link that I'm sharing. What I did is I just saved it as bookmark as a favorite, and I kept it just like that. In terms of migrating templates, especially with new features, what I would probably suggest is number one, you have to watch the introduction on those new features in order to know what the new features are. And then number two, you need to open up your ArchiCAD template file, go into your work environment, and enable the new features to be used in your current template. Otherwise, it won't be available for anyone to use. So that's just one tip or guideline. As Brandon did say about the learn.graphisoft.com, they are releasing more content on step-by-step guides for the SSA users, of course, that you do get a discount using your discount coupon code on that information. All right, the next question is from Thomas. Do you find that ArchiCAD users are lazy when it comes to setting up the IFC translation and correct use of classification? And what is a quick way to get to a good translator setup?
Wow, how long do we have? Thank you, Thomas. I'm going to need to be succinct. It's an interesting one. I just think it's a lack of knowledge initially. I think people need to understand. Look, like any learning, I think if you teach people in a way that where they can see, oh, excuse me, why my dog barks. Sorry about that. If you teach people in a way where they see the value, hold on a minute. Okay, that might be it. My wife has just arrived home. My apologies. The dog got excited. So if you can teach people, right, if you can teach people in such a way that it demonstrates value, they'll buy into it. It's as simple as that. So if they can see that there's value, it's going to save time, it's going to make their life so much better, of course they're going to want to do it. If you tell people they have to do it, you're not going to get their buy-in. So it's really important to frame things in such a way that they see the value in it and it's going to benefit them. So that's the first thing. People are lazy, yes, but I think if you set up your favorites and have proper QA using graphic overrides, for example, then those classifications can be achieved, classification of elements can be achieved pretty quickly. So I would definitely encourage you to do that. Setting up the translator is something else. Out of the box, the translator is not perfect. For starters, it exports everything. You don't want to export everything. If you do export everything, your Revit users who open those IFC files get very grumpy. So we try to minimize where the data outputs where possible, just the relevant information, which is really just a classification really of the elements, to be honest, unless you're sharing it with someone like a QS or quantity surveyor or or someone else. So I think the IFC export should really be about the purpose. What is the purpose of the IFC file? What is it actually for? Not necessarily what platform it's going to. It should be, this is for handover, or this is for coordination, or this is for reference. So that's what I would encourage you to do, rather than thinking about it as an IFC for Revit, for example. What else is there about that? A quick way to get a good setup? Oh, I don't believe there is a quick way. I think really what you should do is go into the translator, turn all the settings, all the data settings off, save, and open it up with BIM Collab or Celebri and just see what happened. Just see what information is being exported and learn. And I think that's the best way to do it. I'm not aware of any YouTube clips as yet. A colleague and I are going to start doing these pretty soon, in fact. But I think that's probably the best best course of action, I think, is to start turning it all off and then start ticking check boxes. I know that sounds like a bit of a cop-out, but it's really, we don't have a lot of time.
Cool, thank you. Carmen just added on the group here that Jared Banks from Shunome, he's got
Yes.
a US version of the template, and he publishes a free version once per year. So
He has done a
that's
metric
just good
one,
to note.
I know, a couple of years ago. I know he did do
Oh,
a metric one. Whether he still does a metric one or not, I'm unsure. I'd say it's a lot of work for him.
I could imagine. All right, next question from Andre Steinberg. How do you explain or relate to management types the value of investing time into templates and training? A lot of people do not see the value as it's not working.
As in, I'm assuming he means that, you know, they don't see the value because the template's not working. It's a tricky one. It really is. Like I said, educating people and demonstrating the value is the most important thing. And identifying where the value is for you in the template. And I use an example like, you know, surfaces, having a code as a prefix that is taggable. Yeah, and then that code is tagged, and people go, oh, I don't need to worry about putting 2D text in here anymore. I don't need to worry about that being wrong anymore because it's actually inheriting the data in the surface. That something as simple as that is incredibly valuable for people, and it's quick and it's easy. Everyone's going to buy into that. I'm assuming that's what you're looking for.
I think the easiest way to find that out is, Andre, did that answer your question? Andre, are you there?
To a degree. It's difficult typing it all out.
Good. Okay,
Yeah.
no problem.
We can come back to it if you want to spend the time typing.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome to reach out to Brandon. Also, to a certain degree, I almost feel like it's very linked to the three pillars that you were describing in your presentation, Brendan, where it's the people, processes, and technology. And if you have a really robust template, but you haven't trained people on how to use it, the value will be lost.
That's true. That's exactly right. Exactly.
Okay, are there any other questions?
The dog likes to talk about IFC by the looks of it.
Yeah.
That looks like it might be it.
Yeah.
Nope. There's another one.
Okay, so Kat is asking, templates should be made in modules, docked as required to form iterations. Do you think that this would be possible?
Oh, gee, wow. Again, that's another can of worms. I worked for a very large practice. The last architecture practice I worked for was very large, and we did very large projects, $2 billion, well, would that be 16 billion Rand, I think, projects, so very significant projects. And they were very varied. So we worked hospitals, we worked on defense projects, we were actually doing some residential and retail, and we had one template. So if you think about the template in terms of modules like you're talking about, we included all of them in our template. I assume that's what you mean. It would be nice to be able to do that. I think if also, if I understand what you're saying, tagging, for example, like I was saying before about the tagging of surfaces, that is a module in itself that can be used on a legacy project. So let's say, for example, you were working on a project for a number of years, you've upgraded to the latest version of software, you've created a new template, but this old project carries on in the old template, but it's still got some time to go. You can't retrofit that existing project into your new template. It's almost impossible. It would take you too much time and it'd be too risky. But what you could do is you could take out those modules, such as I want to bring in this way of doing of tagging finishes or tagging surfaces. That would be an easy thing to retrofit into the project. Door schedules, for example, could be another sort of module that you could plug into very, very easily. But in terms of having a template in terms of modules, I don't really see this being that possible. Everything is really inherently connected by attributes at the end of the day, and those attributes are really, if any advice, if you're going to start a template, you need to start with those attributes and build up from there. You know, lines, fills and surfaces, and then you building materials, and then complex profiles, and you build up that hierarchy. And if you don't, then you're going to end up in a world of hurt. So it's very, very difficult to sort of segregate them all into individual modules, although there are elements of it that kind of are moduled. Hopefully that makes sense to you.
Thanks,
Certainly
Brandon.
not the latest iteration of ArchiCAD, that's for sure.
Sure. We've got another question here from Carmen. It might also be a statement. So to upgrade an old project in an old template, we can bring in the features we need and apply them.
Yeah, absolutely. Certain things you can. I definitely think you can. You know, if you think about all you would need, if you were to bring in that tagging that I was talking about, all you need to do in your existing project is to rename your surfaces with a code. You know, maybe it's a cladding, so it would be CLD1, for example, as an example, and then set up a tag to read that code, and that's it. That's all you need to do. So you certainly can, and the same can be said for things like you know, schedules, because at the end of the day, a schedule can be exported and imported via XML. So you certainly can retrofit those things into older projects. You can. You need to be careful, but certain things certainly can. And that's what I try and do when I'm working with anyone. If I'm developing any templates for any clients, is that because they're looking for a return on investment as soon as possible, we build it in such a way that you can take advantage of some of those in existing projects. It's a very important part of it. No one's got, you know, thousands of dollars to spend on a new template until they're starting to get a return on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. Right. Any other questions before we close up for this month? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Carmen is saying there is quite a lot of paperwork being done outside of ArchiCAD, in brackets drawing issues, which I thought could be included automatically, like issue sheets, etc. Where can we find a good video on this?
Can you please describe what issue sheets are, just so I'm on the drawing issues? Would that be each layout revision, or would this be a process of sketching up of, you know, changes to a particular area? What do you mean by issue sheets?
She's saying recording revisions, site issued drawings, changes, etc.
I think YouTube. I think the tool has changed. I think it's called Issue Manager now, I think, isn't it?
Correct.
YouTube is the place to go for that, definitely.
Free content, yes, please. Okay, I'll see if I can share something with you, Carmen. Take a look for that for you. All right, everybody. I think that concludes this session for today. I'd like to thank everybody for attending today. And thanks to Brendan for making time to deliver this presentation. I'm sure many of our users gained a lot of insight from your session.
Great. Thank you. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks again.
And we'll see you again soon. Thanks, everyone. See you next
All the
month.
best, everyone. Thank you.
Cheers. Goodbye.
Yes. Thanks.